Hello, beautiful people. I'm Prairie Vintage. My name's Linda, and we will be taking a look at a collective messaging pulling through here in regards to we are being called to change this world at whatever capacity we're able to change this world. And this message is needing to come out more today than ever before. So let's take a look. I have pre-shuffled oracle cards. I've not looked at this messaging, although I do know it is in regards to our impact and how conscious we are in making the changes that we're needing to see in this new earth, this awakened state of consciousness that is slowly on the rise. So let's see what we have here. I will put a link to the channeling directly for this message for those of you guys not wanting to go through this card layout, but as usual I like to be as surprised as you guys with the cards here. So we have 16 with unique well-being. Yeah, unique well-being for sure. So we all have a contribution to play here on earth, no matter whether we feel it is big or small. I feel that's coming through as us maybe comparing our contribution or comparing ourselves with others. And we have a repose with 43. Interesting. Look how relaxed and comfortable she looks there. Repose. Poisonous mushrooms. Animal soul friends with 42. 42 and 43. Animal soul friends. We have the wise one, tradition and order. The intuitive eye. We have protection for the vulnerable heart, number 10. We have Pallas Athena, Pallas Athena with think for 30. And we have last quarter moon in Gemini. Clear your mind. Right beside think and vulnerable heart. Coagulation. 66. 66 is a master number in regards to service as a source of joy. Freya, phases and cycles. There is a being within every, there is a beginning. Oh my goodness, a being. Yes, there is a beginning within every ending. Illusions are revealed and released. We have emergence, 25. The frequency of emergence invites us to approach our reality from a childlike attitude of innocence and wonderment, and to watch and celebrate the beauty that unfolds from that place. And priority, interesting. This energy came out for the collective reading I did not too long ago. The cave, 32. We have you got the love, Hadarian energy, codependency and boundaries, and loosen your grip, coping mechanism, density, addiction, and let God in. Oh my goodness. Interesting. We have taking a vow, number 20. We have tombstone, death, grief, and legacy. We have balance yourself, direction, growth, and life stages. I'm going to leave these for now. Actually, I'll pull this one, and then it says Hunter of Death. Okay. I'll pull these here, and then we'll channel what this is about. Well, this message is coming through quite strong. Beautiful souls. Although this is a collective message, the messaging is one of, if you're here, it's doing what you can right here, right now, in order to be the change you're wanting to see. But there is the personal contribution, which adds to the whole. But then there's the whole that sort of dictates or is reflected back to us as a collective that might sway or influence your pure energy here. And so this messaging is very layered because there is how we see ourselves and how we interact in our everyday. And then there is how we see out there, humanity and what they're doing and how people are suffering or engaged. And the story we witness and experience in that world is one we carry, which dictates how we engage further in that world and in our individual lives. So I feel the messaging here is one of that's been coming through for me for quite some time here, since the Lion's Gate, for sure. It's been very intense, this period of retreat and inner self-reflection. And this isn't an inner self-reflection to say, what am I doing wrong? And what can I actively do to get better? Although those are really good questions to ask, because this means we are coming from a good place, intentionally wanting to see change, but we are still potentially in a place that that there is something we have to be outside of ourselves or do or attain from some place other than allowing ourselves to just be. And so this message comes through as a observing ourselves and how we engage our thoughts and our stories and our projections onto the collective humanity itself, the suffering, the evil, the polarity of good versus bad, and the duality between the two. And identifying with the good and creating the ego of the good is perpetuating the duality, so long as we identify with the good. And so, as the parable goes, to be either hot or cold and not lukewarm, it is good to choose either the good or the bad. Because if you're going to choose the bad, at least you will learn through your suffering, through your experience. But you stand somewhere to learn something. But if you stay stuck in the middle, lukewarm, going wherever the wind sort of blows, you're not growing spiritually. You're not allowing yourself to do as it's supposed to be doing here. And what it's supposed to be doing here, our responsibility is to save humanity, grow. But the irony here is the doing bit, because we get attached to who we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to be doing. And the only thing we're really supposed to be doing here is being very aware of ourselves. How we engage, how are we judging? I want to be better, so I will do all of these virtuous things. Stop drinking, start meditating more and more. I'm going to be the best spiritual teacher. I'm going to deliver the most impactful spiritual energy that I'm able to do. And now we've created the spiritual ego. We've identified with another ego, although be it a good ego, an ego that also needs to get transcended. Because the only thing here that is pure and real is the being that is aware that it's aware. And so as we observe ourselves being aware, how we respond, how did I make a story about that person or judge that experience, is all about how I'm seeing myself, a part of myself that is suppressed or rejected or denied. We're asked to be more in our being, our essence, than in our mind of identity. Because when we're identified with anything at all, it is creating that very thing that we have recognized in the false self when we first started our spiritual awakening. And that there is no path. There really is no path. There's just being in the present moment of pure consciousness and observing our awareness in that very present moment. And so if we get attached to the journey of where I'm supposed to be headed or what I'm supposed to be doing, we've now created a false narrative, another identity, another ego. And as we project that humanity out there is addicted to drinking, pornography, lust, evil, celebrities, and all of these things, we are keeping up them out there and me in here. And we're being asked to see that, yes, although there is all of this going on and the entropy of this world, which is just one big chaotic clusterfuck, it is like this because as humans, we are now emerging from this third density way of interacting, this duality, into unity consciousness. And so for those who are still suffering an addiction, who are trying to cope, who are still unaware, it becomes very present to those of us who are awakened state, although we are not as awakened as we might think we are, because we are still attached to a story. And so we're creating this energy. So when we say, I cannot engage in this low vibe relationship, I cannot be surrounded by people who aren't making me feel empowered, I do not want to lower my vibration or energy by settling or anything like this. And we are creating the division, and we are being asked to be very present and aware with our brothers and sisters who are suffering, who are still asleep, who are unaware of their programming and their unconscious programs acting out, who are stuck in their everyday actions, suffering. By being aware of ourselves. But this might take reflection, and this takes time, because it's easy to see what's wrong with them and what's out there. And it's very difficult to see what's going on in front of us. And this isn't to create shame or judgment or even comparison. But our individual contribution must begin from inside out. And so we see our ego playing out, even if it's just with our friends and our family, in way of judging others, see that person, looking at that neighbor or person in a certain way, or making certain comments, gossiping, beliefs that we carry that no matter how small or whether there was no malintent, it is through our words casting spells and judgments on others. Not really all we're doing is seeing a part of ourself that still needs healing. And so if we get pulled into the matrix of the story that's going on out there, the suffering and all of the worldly events, and we feel called to take action, so to speak, we're being asked to look deeper within that and ask the questions. Is my action here going to create further divide and duality? Is it going to lead to suffering when the outcome doesn't quite heal the situation, but it perpetuates a belief that I'm separate from that person, or that I'm good and that person is bad, or that we hold the answer, the key to what others should be doing or shouldn't be doing, rather than dropping the whole story altogether of just sitting in our pure essence being that everyone has. No division, no borders, no them versus me, no segregation, no separation. My brother, my sister, their essence is recognized by my essence, not because of my experience or that I vote right or left or believe in this or that. And so whatever they say or believe that's coming from their programming that might seem like a personal attack, I know I cannot be attacked personally, because my true essence being is pure. It cannot be taken away from. It can only shine light. And so whether this person is still in programming and darkness, when around me, my light will permeate through their darkness just by being aware of my light and my conscious self. But this isn't a virtuous good doing of me and I alone are going to heal others. I'm going to allow myself to be very honest with all of my egos and shadows. And so as that ego self or that false self or that shadow self, whether it be good or bad, I'm witnessing this self that I've created here on earth. And I know I'm something greater than that, which I call, intuitive energy reader, spiritual seeker, empath, psychic, truth seeker, freedom fighter. We're none of these things. We are none of these things but that light in which all of humanity holds. Even the other side, the evil side, the baby eating side, or the crooked side. And so me and my pure essence being, witnessing my ego falling off, all the things that I've attached to that I am not, all the stories that I clung onto that gave me purpose or allowed me to believe I was on some sort of path or some sort of purpose. Spirit is saying the only real purpose here is just to be and to let your light shine without the contamination of the experience, of the programming, of anything other than who you were at birth. And everything else that is wrong is going to present itself and make itself very visible of what needs to fall away. And we will all be pushed to make a choice, because there's no one right now that you can talk to that isn't at the precipice of something very intense. And it is, which way do you want to go? Perpetuate suffering? Live in the illusion of the material world? Celebrities, drinking, phones, twisted views of what we should physically look like, or who we should be, or what we should do, where we should work, how we should spend our time, where we should engage, how well spoken are we? Or allow all of the false to fall away and see the pure, authentic self shine, the true calling of what we're capable of doing in this body, in this limited 3D world. What can I do out of a pure love? Not an egoic love to be worshipped or to be seen from others as intelligent or beautiful or more spiritual or more enlightened, but how can I be of service of right now out of a pure place of genuinely dropping everything that clings onto a story or a belief. And in that moment, the pure self is going to act exactly as it should. That there is no further seeking of who we need to be, what is our special power, our gift, what sort of healing actions can I take, will no longer be a question so much as I no longer see all the things that I don't have to be. I no longer see all these things. I no longer believe or attach myself to any story of what I thought I had to do or where I had to go or what was good and what was bad. And although it's good for contrast to know when something doesn't feel aligned with the authentic self, it will make us feel contracted. We feel jealousy. We feel hurt. We feel suffering, anger, fear, need for control. And so when we're feeling this, we're being asked to take a look. Take a look at ourselves, not what's going on around us. But what within me right now am I hanging on to that's making me believe that there is fear that's required in this moment? Because that means we're attached to some story, some identity. And so these are the bits of us that are still falling away. That we still have a lot more of self that needs to fall away. The little I, the little self. And so I'm not saying that anyone needs to do anything. But what I'm saying here, from what I'm channeling, is that there is the truest state of being, capital B, that's underneath all of us, that right now is so convoluted. So convoluted. And if we're blessed enough to be here, understanding what this message is about, that means we are one that can see through the convolution, if that's a word, through the convoluted goings on. So we are aware. We can see this. And we are here for a purpose. And so this is resonating in a deep, sort of profound way, because this is all coming back to you. That you were to move past this energetic noise, so to speak, this coagulation that has us stuck, that pulls us back to that situation, identify as that being or that thing, and it's shaking us loose, saying we're none of those things that we're attached to. And that we're not on a linear sort of journey to get anywhere. That being right here and honest with self and observing ourselves in that moment is the greatest gift we can do to bring the best to this world, to the collective, and that we will be protected here by the divine. And that no matter how difficult it gets out there, in way of suffering and evil and darkness, we are heavily protected here because we are doing divine work. We are sharing the authentic love of that of the divine to everyone and everything, not to only the ones that support us, not to only the ones that believe in our sort of same beliefs. And this starts in the immediacy of your relationships. And so when we recognize that we're codependent on anything, be it positive or negative, and I'm not saying, that we shouldn't be positive, but this transcends positivity. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to stop whatever I'm doing here because my more virtuous ego is now going to take form. And now I attach to that version of myself. I now attach to the version of myself that's independent from these toxic relationships, these toxic people. I'm creating these boundaries. I'm removing myself from situations. But those are the situations that the divine is saying, you blessed light are to cast your beautiful light, to have healthy boundaries, to see beyond that of people's egos and shadows, not to create a dependency or an attachment to something that we perceive to be the more spiritual or enlightened thing to do, but that the authentic self in that moment will know exactly what to do in that situation. And those of us that are still lost, which I don't feel a lot of you guys would be still listening to this video, but maybe, that are trying to cope through addiction, through religion, through identifying as left or right, or good or bad, them and me, this and that. We're being asked to push ourselves to a greater level here, to see ourselves as someone who is transcended past this dualistic way of thinking. To just trust that those thoughts that we're carrying is that of the programming, is that of what's keeping exactly alive what we're not wanting to see. Because when we come from a place of anger, resentment, or I am right, we are now reflecting the other side equally, but in the polar opposite. And so although we want to make sure that we are not attaching ourselves to a new identity, a new story, we want to see with new eyes, and these eyes are that of the awakened eyes of self. Because we are not awareness so much as we are the being that is aware of the awareness. I am aware that I am aware. And so now there's this other layer of openness where the divine can come through us. And so generally my messaging is always about us sort of shining the light on our own ego and just seeing, seeing what's in front of us and not casting judgment and energetically sort of attaching emotions. We're really being called to transcend this energy. So there is an action which might take time. And so we're being guided here that we don't need to reach a certain state right now. And we don't have to be anywhere other than the present moment. And that through time of observing ourselves honestly and openly, seeing our own ego from the eyes of the being that's aware, we slowly start to shift how we engage, and those things start to fall away. But we have to transcend that energy and want to devote ourselves to a better healing place on earth. Not because it will further me or do anything for me other than the fact that I have pure love for my brothers and sisters here on earth and humanity. Period. End of story. That the desire to find peace on earth, a change in this world, is the greatest driver I have for detaching from any story, any illusion, any matrix belief that's causing suffering. And because suffering does not need to exist. And by me being anything at all, perpetuates this suffering. And so it's difficult when we have to engage with people who are still in programming and suffering, because sometimes they'll feel like they're attacking us, or going against a river that's loud. But we are being called by the divine to be very aware that this is what's happening. And it becomes easier when we're not convoluted with the thoughts and the stories. That the river goes right through the light. That no river of negativity and ego can push us back of that of the surrounding world or the collective. But when we have ego still and particles of impure thought, that the river of other egos can push us back, and we become one with that river. But when we're of pure light, and we just allow it to be, that river will not push us. And as we stand together in that light, slowly that river starts to dissipate. Slowly that river starts to turn to light. The light becomes very bright, and the river of ego and that chaotic flow starts to diminish until all that's left is light. And it's going to take time, but time is just an illusion for us here on earth. And so we're being asked just to shine the light. But in order to shine this light, it cannot be contaminated with either the good or the bad ego, because it starts to sort of gather, and it becomes that in which it can get pulled and swept in the river of back to where we've dug ourselves out of, or where we've awakened out of. We've awakened out of these impure thoughts and egoic thoughts and drivers of the material world. We now see differently. But if we're still carrying these within us, we have to be very aware of these egoic stories in self, identities and attachments, because it will create suffering. And so I'm seeing that we're still codependent, and we're still learning about boundaries and healthy relationships. And the divine is asking to be devoted, to make a promise, to be the best, truest, authentic light within yourself that you could possibly attain for yourself, without comparing it to anyone or anything else. But be forgiving. And the best, when I say this, is really the most authentic. Not the best without any, without tucking away the faults. Like if we're hiding the parts of self that are challenging, shame, and we don't want others to see or ourselves to see, we learn how to hide this from ourselves. And the divine is saying, take a look at that. Take a look at these impure thoughts and these impurities of self and the shadow self. because this is the growth that you're at, and this will give you new direction. This is the purpose, because I feel there is kind of getting lost along the way of our own belief of which direction we were supposed to go, where we should be on this spiritual journey, at what level of growth we're supposed to be at. And Spirit is saying only you can take a look at your best self with all the impurities that still sit there, and all the egos and all the subconscious programming that's still there, and sit with that and be honest with that and transcend past that and recognize what's still there and still unhealed about you. What are we still covering up with addiction and attachment? Are we filling ourselves with relationship, material things, work, distraction, avoidant, videos, spiritual knowledge, all of these attachments? And then to recognize this, as this is what's holding us back. This is what we're being asked to observe within self. And as we see this, our being is aware that it's aware, and it starts to emerge even more. And there's a message coming through that it's not even stopping just with humans. It's stopping nowhere but the unlimited, infinite light that the universe holds, which is never ending. So through animals, through nature, the only limitation is that in which we envision or create. And so this pure consciousness is interwoven in everything and everyone, just like a web. And because as humans, we're so precious here to be given this experience, we are the catalyst to initiate this change, to be aware of this change. To be aware, and not to force others to awaken or to do anything like that, but just be aware of ourselves, witness ourselves, be there for the ones who are suffering, and not to support their victimization or to prop them up because they're more spiritual or more enlightened, but to be there in pure light as a support here that will cascade throughout everything and everyone, including the animals and nature, and the formless will pull through everything that has form. And all of these sort of worldly things will slowly start to fall away. Because it cannot sustain itself in this brightest light, that of the divine. And so we do not feed it. We depolarize it by being love and light, but from the purest place. And so when we recognize the difference between toxic sort of positivity, I'm going to love from a place of ego, like that in which we've created the story of the attachment. Or we can look at the love that flows through when we release all of that And the only thing that's left there is pure awareness of how beautiful humanity is, how sacred, how connected we are. Now, when we see someone else suffer, we feel the suffering, but we know that it is just a projection. And so we don't attach our emotional drive to that. We know that suffering is an illusion that we can either carry or we could shine our light of the truest, authentic awareness and see it for what it really is and depolarize it more and more collectively. So beautiful people, this is a collective message in regards to how you can make this change, you know, wherever we sit, because we're not all at the same level of spiritual growth, and there is no wrong and right, and there is no enlightened state. There's only that in which we see, but see not through the lens of projection and programming, but that in which we see in self. Have courage, strength, fearlessness, warrior. Look at, so us as a collective here, standing side by side, fearless. There is nothing to fear, because nothing can pierce light. Nothing can push it back. Nothing can contain it. Mother, unconditional love, giving birth to life, being compassionate to all, not selective, no favoritism. Just as nature, just as the sun shines its light on the most evil people, the most grotesque plants, animals, the most beautiful trees, and the most beautiful people. The light, the sunlight, doesn't select where it wants to shine. It shines its light everywhere. Nature is giving to all and everything equally. A mother is equally loving to all of her children. She's unconditional. Don Juan. So, are we pulled by lust, by the material world, by the distraction, by the story of others? The story really is that in which we create of others. Are we attached to the story we made up of what's going on out there? And we're pulled by this attachment, not realizing that it is our ego driving the agenda, no matter how virtuous it may seem or how unconscious, or materialistic. We may disguise it as being enlightened or empowered or being loving, wanting to give love to another, heal another, but it is stemmed from codependency, a lack of boundaries, a lack of seeing through our own ego, a lack of seeing through our own intention. And so, are we unconditionally loving to all, including that in which we're recognizing that repels us? And why does it repel us? Why does it make us feel like we need to remove ourselves to really look at it and be honest? Because if we're feeling any sort of negativity, It is somewhere stored within our own subconscious. And so it's easy to be pulled to the things we like and the people we like. And it's difficult to remain authentic and pure when the situation and the people are tough. But that is what a warrior does. A warrior doesn't go where it's easy. A mother doesn't only sort of mother when her child is being good. So we don't only go pulled where our desire is pulling so much as being very present of what the universe is unfolding in front of you, because you are being called to be the light in that moment. And so if it doesn't feel ideal for you, it's because we have a story or an understanding of what an ideal thing would be, and we're being called to detach from this. Companion, loyalty, tenacity, and unselfishness. So again, I'm seeing soul tribe. And so when we're consciously aware and awakened, we emanate a light, an energy, and it attracts. And so if you're feeling alone, know that you're not alone. You are not alone. And if you feel alone, we're not connecting to unity consciousness. And we're to look at this. And that means there's more work to be done in how we're talking to self, how we're seeing self, or seeing self as separate. Transmutation, absolutely. So, burning off the false self, because we create more false narratives when we shift from certain things to other things. We could create further attachment. And so we're being asked to transmute everything and anything with the death here, and the death of the false self, the spiritual self, the self that believes it's on some sort of path. Because this would mean we're not just being in this present moment. And if we don't know how to get to this sort of present moment being, we're being asked to go within, to ask questions, self-inquiry, to burn off the parts of us that still know that we're not quite, it's not quite right how we're connecting with ourselves. And the only way to burn it off is to be very aware of it and to understand that there is a story, a belief in our mind that we're still carrying that is untrue. Enchantment. So, beautiful people, your light is being called to change this world. And this light gets brighter and brighter and more magnetic. And it is very attracting to souls that see this light and want to emulate this light and be like this light. And so they start to self-inquire. They start to see the contamination where their coagulation is going on in their own energetic field, where they're getting stuck and hung up, and where the river is pulling them back, the river of unhealthy behaviors and actions and thoughts of the everyday world. And so here is where there's true bliss and peace. And so we can keep chasing the false happiness of the spiritual warrior, or the high or the thrill we get when we learn a certain concept or a certain skill or that, but we're just creating more ego. But the true bliss piece is when we detach from every story, every construct, every attachment that we've identified with. And there we find the truest happiness and bliss. And there we have the brightest light. And so we can engage with others and being fully present rather than pulled by our own sort of selfish thoughts. Our own reason to service others is really an intention we have of servicing self, and saying to ourselves that it is okay where we're at, but I can see a better me. That it doesn't have all of these beliefs and constructs and attachments that exists. And for me to get there, I have to be very honest with myself. And it's not going to come from anyone else out there, but by being very true with what I'm seeing. So I could be liberated and free and not need a relationship, not need the addiction, not need to lust after, not need to continue the bad habits, depend on the world going to shit so I can be of light, not depend on the enlightened community so I can feel more at peace, but that I can drop everything and everyone and know that I am peace and know that I am divine, and I can connect back here and feel my brothers and sisters here. I've transcended all of this worldly sort of matrixy, materialistic stories that I've clung on to and get easily pulled back to. So self-reflection is great, but if we're in our cave, in the hermit for quite some time, we are being called to step out because we're ready. And the best way to see what might need work within self, really it's not the true self, but the false self, to see the false self, to know what we need to shed, what we need to transmute, is to be engaged in difficult situations, is to be in front of people that are challenged, is to be in that relationship with the person who might be suffering. Because we see ourselves even more clear. And they cannot taint what is pure within us. They cannot sway it one way or another. But they need your bright light, your healing light. But you don't need to go chase them, coerce them, or force them. But you don't run away and hide. You just are being. We're just being. Okay, but we're not looking out there, we're looking at ourselves. How are we being here? What exactly are we thinking? What is my intention? What story am I holding up right now? Or do I feel like a mother would with this unconditional love to this moment, to this person, to this situation, casting no judgment, just being of service? What can I do right now? You are my brother, my equal, my friend, my sister, my partner, no matter who you are, because I see your light. It matches my light behind all of this other stuff that's going on. That is being truly aware and awakened. Okay, so I love you guys very much. I hope this helped you, and I'll see you at the next one. Bye-bye.